What's going on, everyone? I go by the name of KB the Mark, co-host of the DMV podcast, and this is your wrestling news for September 11th, 2021. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Got a couple of news stories to get into. Let's jump right into it. Number one, Braun Strowman to Impact Wrestling. This story is coming from WrestlingHeadlines.com. According to the latest Wrestling Observer newsletter, former WWE Universal Champion Adam Shearer, formerly known as Braun Strowman, is currently in talks with Impact following his release from WWE back in June. Reports are that Shearer has not officially signed a deal as of yet, but one is expected as the promotion inches closer to its Bound for Glory pay-per-view from Las Vegas. It is also noted that there were a few recently cut WWE stars who could be making their debut on that show, as that will be well past the 90-day non-compete clause that many had. Shearer hinted at joining Impact last month by saying he was ready to make an impact on his social media accounts, even using the hashtag Titan, which some assume may be a new nickname he uses down the line. Another tease came from top Impact executive Scott D'Amore, who used the term Braun for Glory when hyping up the October pay-per-view. I'm going to love watching Braun Strowman in Impact. I believe he's going to be a champion in Impact. And I'm talking about he's going to hold the Impact World Championship. I wouldn't give it to him right away. We don't want to go back to that old school Impact TNA booking where we just instantly hotshot a ex-WWE debut to the moon. We don't need to do that. I like where Impact is at right now. Let's keep that title on Christian Cage. And then when we decide who is going to take it off Christian Cage, we bring in Adam Shearer. And maybe we start off his first couple months with a big guy. Maybe a Cass XL, Will Morrissey, or W Morrissey. Maybe we started off with W Morrissey. Then maybe we transition him to Moose. You know, he goes through some of the top talent in Impact Wrestling before we transition him into that championship window. But I am going to love Adam Shearer in Impact. I believe he's going to be a major piece for them going forward. And who knows? He's going to give you eyes. So he's going to add viewership to Impact. But maybe he reaches out to some of the other releases who are maybe thinking about, hey, I really want to go to AEW. And Braun Strowman tells them, hey, Impact does their tapings in bulk. You might have a little bit more time for your family. This might be where, you can make that next jump in your career. And maybe we start getting more big names to Impact Wrestling. I love that acquisition by them. If they do indeed get Adam Shearer, I'm going to love that acquisition. That is a top acquisition for them. Number 2, Bronson Reichsteiner gets new name ahead of WWE NXT debut. This story is coming from WWE. Next story, Bronson Reichsteiner gets... Next story, Bronson Reichsteiner gets new name ahead of WWE NXT debut. This is coming from WrestlingInc.com. Bronson Reichsteiner, the son of pro wrestling legend Rick Steiner, will apparently be going by the name Rex Steiner going forward. On Friday, Rex Steiner changed his Twitter name to Rex Steiner and his handle to Rex Steiner WWE. The second generation wrestler was featured on the latest teaser that aired during Friday's WWE Super Smackdown at Madison Square Garden. The teaser video Next story. Bronson Reichsteiner gets new name ahead of WWE NXT debut. This story is coming from WrestlingInc.com. Bronson Reichsteiner, the son of pro wrestling legend Rick Steiner, will apparently be going by the name of Rex Steiner going forward. On Friday, Reichsteiner changed his Twitter name to Rex Steiner and his handle to Rex Steiner WWE. The second generation wrestler was featured on the latest teaser that aired during Friday's WWE Super Smackdown at Madison Square Garden. Reichsteiner signed with WWE in February, and he has been training at the Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. As reported earlier, Reichsteiner dropped several hints on social media last week that would indicate his immediate debut on NXT. He has also revealed his wrestling gear via Instagram. Reichsteiner appeared as one of the security guards during a Samoa Joe Karrion Kross segment on NXT last month. He was the guard who Joe put to sleep in the ring with the Coquina clutch. Very interesting. I am glad that they are going to start using some younger guys. I'm just very concerned on what this new NXT is going to be. What is it going to look like? Is it going to look exactly like the main roster? And if it is, then why would we want to watch NXT? Next story. When will Bray Wyatt make his AEW debut? This story is coming from WrestlingNews.co. It was first reported that Wyatt is headed to AEW once his 90-day non-compete clause expires. However, Impact Wrestling is also interested in signing the former WWE champion. Dave Meltzer reported in the latest edition of the Wrestling Observer newsletter that if Wyatt signs with Impact, then he'll likely make his promotional debut at the Bound for Glory pay-per-view event next month. On the flip side, if he signs with All Elite Wrestling, then his debut could take place on the September 29th edition of Dynamite, as there has been talk of that. This episode of AEW's flagship show is being held in Rochester, New York, which is Brody Lee's home city. Lee was originally slated to make his AEW debut on an episode of Dynamite from Rochester, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic that got nixed, Wyatt and Lee were close friends, so this would be a cool tribute to the beloved wrestler. If, and I've said this before, if Bray Wyatt wants to do the cult leader Bray Wyatt gimmick, then he is immediately ready for AEW. He's got a ready-made storyline with him taking over the Dark Order, being the heel, but saying he's doing it for Brody, which will be probably one of the best storylines going towards the end of the year, because with the Dark Order imploding, you can really separate the comedy from Dark Order with like Uno and Grayson, and let John Silver, Alex Reynolds, and Colt Cabana go out and do their thing, and Preston Vance number 10 stays because of just the undying loyalty that he had to Brody Lee. So I think that will be one of the best storylines going towards the end of the year if he wants to come in and do the cult leader gimmick. If he wants to do a Fiend-like gimmick, then I would say he needs to go to Impact. Impact is the company that does really well with the supernatural gimmicks and everything like that. I think he could join Decay, maybe take over Decay, become their leader. Or he could just sit around and do all of the supernatural stuff that he was doing as the Fiend in Impact. So either way, I feel like he's going to be well loved in either company. It's just all about what he wants to do and understanding what he can do in either company. Like I said, if he's going to do the cult leader, AEW. If you want to do more of the Fiend type behavior and booking like that, go to Impact. Either way, he's going to be a great addition to either company. Next story. Jonathan Coachman says WWE punished him for not going to Afghanistan. This story is coming from WrestlingNews.co. Says during a recent Ask Coach Anything Live podcast, former WWE announcer took questions from fans on his career in WWE. Coach shared an interesting story about getting punished for not going to Afghanistan for WWE's tribute to the troops. He says, this is a story that I've never told, and I'm still a little pissed about it, to be honest with you. Here's what happened. In 2004 or 2005, the years are blurry, but that's when we were doing our shows in Afghanistan. It was supposed to be, if you didn't want to go, you didn't have to. It was supposed to be completely up to you because we were going into a war zone and they couldn't make you do it. That's what was told to us. My first child was about to be born 6 months after that. So my wife at the time, she, and rightfully so, didn't want me going to the middle of a war zone. So I told the people who were setting it up at WWE, I said, listen, I'm not going. At that point, I had never said no to Vince once in my career, not for anything. So they thought I was joking. To travel to Afghanistan, you have to put your name on a list with the Pentagon and the military to get clearance. I showed up to the building that day. I showed up to the building the day that we were supposed to leave in Charleston, South Carolina. They came out and asked for my bags. I said, I told you I wasn't going. They said, we thought you were kidding. I said, I'm not kidding about that. I thought it was cool. You could only take 18 people. That's why it was so important. You could only take 18 and 12 crew guys, 30 people total. The next week I was down doing commentary. There's always been a culture of, I don't want to use the word hazing because I didn't get hazed. That wasn't this punishment perhaps. But when the show was over, one of the referees, I can't remember who it was, Undertaker was ending the show and he came over and said, you have to go hit the Undertaker from behind. I said, why? And he's referencing the referee. He said, So the referee said, you have to go hit the Undertaker from behind. I said, why? He said, that's just what they're telling me. So basically, as punishment for not going to Afghanistan, I got beat up by the Undertaker. Then they hit Batista's music. He came down and finished the job. As I'm getting my ass kicked, I'm thinking, is this really worth it? I've done everything I could possibly do, and I'm still getting my ass handed to me because I refused to go to a war zone for the second time. I went the year before. It was crazy. I was furious about that. The one thing about Vince that I have taken that's positive is he has this incredible ability to forget what just happened the week before. You can be in a knockdown, drag out, screaming fight with him, which a lot of people have done, and you think, oh my goodness, my job's on the line. They're not going to keep. They're going to fire him. Whatever the case might be. You see him the next week and he's like, hey pal, how you doing? That's kind of how he is. I took every finisher they had. I'm proud of the fact that I could take all the finishers, but was it the right thing to do? No, because I always did the right thing without fail. And I'm going to follow up that story with this story from Sportskeeda. I will never work with somebody like that again. Ex-WWE commentator says Vince McMahon owes him $20,000. This is coming from Sportskeeda.com. Former WWE commentator Jonathan Coachman is unhappy with the way he was treated by WWE and Vince McMahon in recent years. Coachman alleges that McMahon and WWE owe him anywhere between $8,000 and $20,000. On his Ask Coach Anything podcast, Coachman stated that he wasn't reimbursed for expenses that he incurred while traveling to help set up the XFL. He says, and I quote, I paid my own expenses, which was between $8,000 and $20,000. I was supposed to be reimbursed later, said the former WWE commentator. He's particularly unhappy that Vince McMahon and a few others in the WWE boardroom were selling their stocks for millions, while those working for XFL had their checks bouncing. Coachman doesn't want to be associated with the WWE in the future again. He says this, and I quote. Jonathan Coachman says this, and I quote, I will never work with somebody like that again. So the taste in my mouth from wrestling right now is very, very bitter, because when you put in 20 years into somebody, a relationship to help them build their brand, and then they just turn your back on you over to them, a little bit of money. To me, it was a lot of money. Then at the same time, they're cashing in millions of dollars in stock and laying people off the same day they're doing that is bad for business. Coach stated that his last run with WWE left a bad taste in his mouth and that he was unhappy at how he was treated despite being associated with them for 20 years. So I'm going to combine these two stories in my opinion. This company is a piece of shit. Vince McMahon is a great businessman, and I'm not going to take that away. But if these stories are true, and Jonathan Coachman hasn't been paid, yet this is a multi-billion-dollar company and he's a billionaire, why can't you pay him? Now to get to the wrestling aspect of this. I find it amazing that just because he didn't want to go and do tribute to the troops, you proceed to then have him beat up by The Undertaker and Batista. The man was about to have his first child, and his wife at the time just doesn't want him over there. So why does he have to attack The Undertaker from behind, get beat up, and then get beat up by Batista? To me, that is just an all-time bad look. It's a bad look of epic proportions. If the stories are true and it was on a volunteer basis and he said no, then what the fuck is the problem? What the fuck is the problem? It was voluntary. He said he didn't want to do it. So why did he have to get his ass beat by The Undertaker and Batista? And then I want to raise this question. Why did The Undertaker and Batista go along? Why doesn't anybody tell Vince McMahon no? That's the problem. He's surrounded with too many yes men. People who are going to bend the knee to make sure what he says is law. None of this shit should have happened. He was about to have a child. His wife then didn't want him over there. What's the problem? This company's a fucking joke. Last story. WWE Smackdown match was cut from the show due to time constraints. This story is coming from WrestlingNews.co. Post-Wrestling's John Pollock is reporting that a Smackdown match was pulled from the show due to time constraints. Pollock reports that Zelina Vega and Carmella were scheduled to team up against Liv Morgan and Toni Storm. There was no mention of the match during the Smackdown broadcast. Earlier in the day, Morgan made a reference to Madison Square Garden in a tweet, and it's clear that she was intending to wrestle at the time she sent the tweet. As seen below, it looks like Vega was in her ring gear and ready to wrestle on the show. It's baffling that she was not included on the show on the anniversary weekend of 9/11. Zelina Vega lost her father in the 9/11 attacks in 2001. This company, I just said it, this company is a piece of shit. This meant so much to Zelina Vega. Lost her father in the 9/11 attacks. It's the remembrance show from WWE for 20 years. You're in Madison Square Garden. She's dressed and ready to go, and you pull the match. What bothers me the most about this, is that if I'm WWE, you have to know how important this is to Zelina Vega. We could have cut some time off of that 10-man tag and let Zelina Vega get this moment in Madison Square Garden where she lost her father on the 9/11 attacks. But you decided to give us 10-man action instead of giving Zelina Vega such a special moment in her wrestling career by allowing her to wrestle the September 10th edition of Smackdown one day before the 20th anniversary of 9/11. It just goes to show you that Vince McMahon wants to make the moments instead of just allowing a moment to happen naturally. I feel very sorry for Zelina Vega in this instance. That's gotta be gut wrenching to sit there in gear, ready to do something. Her heart was probably heavy. Said, I'm doing this for my dad, and to be in gear and not get a chance. It just goes to show you that Vince doesn't give a shit. He signs Zelina Vega back, future endeavor to her husband, and she can't even get this moment. The more and more I look at this, I ask myself, Zelina Vega, why did you even come back to this company? This piece of shit company. Shit is awful. That is it for the news on September 11, 2021. Let us know what you think about any of these stories in the comments. Please don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button. It'll really help the channel grow. I go by the name of KB the Mark, co-host of the DMV podcast, and we will see you soon.
I started with nothing and came out a king. I've been the one that's been ballin' for rings. It's been me and my team and we chasing the green. My team be the shit, we ain't ballin' for free. My team be the shit, we ain't ballin' for free.